Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving right into some serious biblical scholarship to pull back the curtain on Matthew chapter 16. We're looking at the ancient, Old Testament roots behind the primacy of Peter and the keys of the kingdom. It's a fascinating look at how the New Testament takes an ancient blueprint and builds something completely new on top of it. Let's get started.
Here's our roadmap for this exegetical journey. We'll start with the confession at Caesarea Philippi. Look at the foundation stone. Explore the restored Davidic kingdom. Unlock the keys of the prime minister. Decode binding and loosing. And wrap up with the universal kingdom.
So starting right off with section 1, the confession at Caesarea Philippi.
To set the stage, we really have to look at the central mystery of this text. When Jesus tells Simon Peter that he's going to give him the keys of the kingdom of heaven, what does that actually mean? You know, to our modern ears, it kind of just sounds like a nice spiritual metaphor, but to a first century audience, it was a very specific, heavily politically charged statement. So, to understand it, we need to look at exactly where they were and what had just been said.
They're in Caesarea Philippi, which is a predominantly Gentile city north of Palestine. Jesus asks his disciples who they say he is, and Peter immediately steps up as the spokesman. He confesses, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Now, the commentary points out something absolutely crucial here. This confession is actually double-sided. Yes, Peter is proclaiming Christ's divinity, but he's also identifying Jesus as the long-awaited Messiah King of Israel. In the Old Testament traditions, Israel's kings enjoyed this unique relationship with God as his sons. So Peter's confession triggers a really profound response from Jesus, and it's completely loaded with ancient Davidic Covenant imagery.
Moving right along to section 2, the foundation stone.
Jesus replies to Peter's confession with an immediate, life-changing move. He changes Simon's name. Now in Greek, that name is Petros, but historical evidence heavily suggests Jesus originally spoke these words in Aramaic using the word Kepha. This is super fascinating because Kepha doesn't just mean a pebble. It literally denotes a sizable rock, specifically one suitable to be used as a building foundation. So Jesus isn't just giving him a nickname here, he is bestowing a literal foundational title upon him.
And this perfectly illustrates how Peter fits into ancient salvation history. In biblical tradition, a new name signifies a new God-given role. Just look at these parallels with Abraham from the book of Genesis. They're both blessed by God, both respond with heroic faith, both receive a massive divine mission, both have their names changed by God, Abram to Abraham, Simon to Peter. And if you look in the book of Isaiah, Abram is actually referred to as a rock, exactly like Peter is here. According to the text, Jesus is elevating Peter to be the chief patriarch of the new covenant, perfectly mirroring the old.
That brings us to section 3, the Davidic kingdom restored.
So when Jesus talks about building his church and giving keys to a kingdom, what kingdom is he actually talking about? Well, let's trace the history to see the massive gap he's bridging here. Around 1000 BC, the glorious kingdom of David was established, and God swore a covenant oath to make David's throne last forever. But it didn't last in its political form. By 930 BC, the kingdom splits. By 586 BC, the empire totally crumbles, and the Babylonian exile begins. The tent of David had fallen. For centuries, the prophets envisioned a new David who would restore this kingdom. And then, incorporated into the royal line of David, Jesus arrives in the 1st century AD to finally achieve that restoration, not as a political empire, but as a transcendent fulfillment.
And this creates an amazing typological bridge. Back in the Old Testament, David's son Solomon was the anointed temple builder. Now, according to Jewish tradition, the foundation stone of that Jerusalem temple capped off and sealed a long shaft that led straight down to the netherworld, or Hades. Now compare that to the New Testament fulfillment. Jesus, the definitive son of David, announces he will build his church, a spiritual temple, upon the foundational rock of Peter. And because it rests on this rock, the powers of death and deception, the gates of Hades, will not overcome it. It's a brilliant historical callback.
Let's look at section 4, keys of the prime minister.
Okay, to truly unlock the historical context of these keys, we have to go back to the prophet Isaiah. Listen closely to this. He writes, "I will place on his shoulder the key of the house of David. He shall open and none shall shut, and he shall shut and none shall open." That's Isaiah chapter 22, verse 22. The scholarship points out that Jesus is directly, specifically evoking this exact Old Testament passage when he speaks to Peter.
And honestly, this completely resolves our central mystery. See, in the Old Testament Davidic Empire, the king appointed a cabinet of ministers. Among them was the Al-Baith, the prime minister.
This guy was elevated to a totally unique status, ranking second only to the king himself. And the symbol of this prime minister's office, which was handed down to successors, was the key of the house of David. So in Matthew 16, the commentary indicates that Jesus, acting as the new Davidic king, is formally appointing Peter as his prime minister. He's making him the chief steward over the kingdom of heaven in the church. Entrusted with those keys, Peter is depicted as wielding Christ's own royal authority.
Which leads us to Section 5, Authority to Bind and Loose.
Right after handing over the keys, Jesus tells Peter that whatever he binds on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever he looses on earth shall be loosed in heaven. Now, binding and loosing was very familiar language in early Jewish literature, and it carries three specific administrative connotations. First, it means teaching authority and the ability to render binding interpretations of the law. Second, the authority to include or exclude members of a religious community. And third, the authority to forgive sins. The source text suggests that through this exact mechanism, heaven is actively governing the church on earth.
Now, because of the sheer weight of these promises, you can imagine this passage has been the subject of massive theological interpretation over the centuries. To report on this neutrally, the sources note that the First Vatican Council in 1870 cited this exact episode as biblical support for the primacy of Peter and his successive popes. They interpreted this text to mean that Peter is the visible head of the church, holding a primacy of jurisdiction, and that this unique role as chief teacher and ruler is passed on through successors, exactly the same way the prime minister's office was passed down in the ancient Davidic kingdom.
Finally, Section 6, a universal kingdom restored. If you open up the book of Acts, the textual evidence of Peter's leadership is absolutely staggering. He consistently acts as the visible head right from day one. Look at the list. He initiates the replacement of Judas. He delivers the inaugural sermon at Pentecost. He performs the first recorded healing in church history. He handles the first case of ecclesial discipline. And crucially, when God arranged for the very first Gentile conversions in church history, it was Peter who was sent out to preach and administer their baptism. No other apostle is asked to shoulder anywhere near those kinds of responsibilities.
What we're witnessing in the book of Acts is literally the repitching of the fallen tent of David. But, as you can see, this restored dwelling looks quite a bit different from the original. The focal point is no longer a physical palace in Jerusalem, it's a throne in heaven. The royal ministers are apostles now, not politicians. And that multinational empire of David, the one that originally brought Gentiles and Israelites together, it was really just a scale model. The commentary explains that the church is its direct continuation. It's a worldwide universal kingdom uniting Israel and the Gentiles into a single covenant family under Christ the King, governed by his chief steward.
Which brings us to a really thought-provoking final question. If the ancient Davidic kingdom was sworn by God to last forever, how does seeing the church as its direct continuation change the way we view spiritual authority today? It's a massive paradigm shift, isn't it? One that bridges thousands of years of biblical history, connecting King David to Jesus, to Peter, and to the ongoing life of the church. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep analyzing, keep exploring, and keep learning. Catch you next time.